propagandist and imagine what is going to come out of her mouth. Don't stare for too long, however, lest you become a pillar of salt. Let's hear the insights from CNN as relates to Trump meeting with Putin in Alaska. Behold.
Critics of President Trump will say the pomp and circumstance, the red carpet, the warm handshake, that President Trump simply lost that Putin gained there just by being on the world stage and walking down a red carpet with the president. Your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, critics of President Trump are always going to find something to criticize. You don't even pay attention to it anymore. But I will tell you this, Putin is already on the world stage. He's already on the world stage. The guy's conducting a full-scale war in Ukraine. He's already on the world stage. He has the world's largest tactical nuclear arsenal in the world and the second largest strategic nuclear arsenal in the world. He's already on the world stage. When I hear people say that, oh, it elevates him. Well, all we do is talk about Putin all the time. All the media's done is talk about Putin all the time for the last 4 or 5 years. That doesn't mean he's right about the war. That doesn't mean he's justified about the war. Put all that aside. It means you're not going to have a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. You're not going to end a war between Russia and Ukraine without dealing with Putin. That's just common sense.
Yep.
I shouldn't even have to say it.
Yep.
So people can say whatever they want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to get the Russian side to agree to things that they don't want to agree to if we're going to have peace. If not, there'll just be a war. They'll keep killing each other. And life will go on in America and in the rest of the world, but not for Ukraine. So the president has invested a lot of time in trying to bring an end to this war. He deserves credit for doing that. He gets criticism for doing that. He could have just let this war go on. The president could have just said, this is Biden's war. It started under him. We'll do what we can for Ukraine, but we're going to focus on other things. He could have easily said that. But he's the only leader in the world that can get Putin to a meeting to talk about serious things.
I forget that woman's name from CNN, but it's the same one, I'm not mistaken about this, who was talking to J.D. Vance and, celebrating the fact that it was only a handful of apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado that had been taken over by TDA gang members. Just a handful. And now they got it under control. We're going to talk about it with Barnes, but I wanted to start the show off with something a little lighter than the first intro segment that I'm going to get into. Also, I wanted to take the opportunity to poke a little fun at the Krassenstein idiots. They are the biggest idiots on the face of the planet. The Krassenstein bros, if you know them on Twitter, let's do this here. Let's do this. The Krassensteins, in response to or in reaction to Trump meeting with Putin in Alaska, posted as follows. They should have had snipers in Anchorage, Alaska, ready to take him out as soon as he shrugged. I read that post, and I'm like, it has to be fake. And then I go to Krassenstein's Twitter feed, and lo and behold, it's not fake. It's just ambiguously worded because his argument is going to be, and I don't even take him at his word for it. I understand that's probably what he meant. He was talking about Putin, as if that makes it any better because there was a video attached to his tweet. And at some point you see Putin shrug. And Krassenstein, in his infinite wisdom, puts out an ambiguous tweet that many people understandably took to be a call for the assassination of Donald John Trump after we're either up to 2, 3, 4, or 5 failed attempts. Poor wording because they're idiots. And even in the most charitable of interpretations, take them at their word, they meant Putin and not Trump. They're still the biggest idiots on the planet. They reply to people, OMFG. For those who are illiterate or blind, I never called for Trump to be blank, or I never will. I do think the world would be a much better place without war criminal and dictator Vladimir Putin. And if the CIA has the opportunity, they should take him out without evidence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The man is an absolute political idiot, like of the highest order. It was ambiguous. It was understandably interpreted for those who don't watch the video, and even for some who do, to mean that he was talking about 8647, which he also posted to Twitter, if you all remember that. But he says, no, I was talking about Putin. Oh, okay. So you only called for the assassination of the president of a foreign country, of a nuclear-armed foreign country, at a peace summit to which he has been summoned by the president. Congrats, you're not treasonous. You're just an effing idiot. Earmuffs, because there's a kid who's putting together a Lego-type thing behind me. These are the idiots that have the right to speak on the internet. Oh my sweet, merciful goodness. We're going to get into the Putin-Russia summit in a second. Let me just make sure that we are, in fact, live and proper across all platforms. For those of you who are wondering why it looks like I might be being held hostage, I'm not. We're on our way back to sunny, free Florida from beautiful Tennessee, and we're passing through Georgia. And we had our 1776 Viva Barnes type, the 1776 had an event yesterday and today. Behavior panel was there. Richard Barris was there. I was there. And I drove up, met with a member of our locals community who I stayed with up north of Chattanooga, went to a firing range. It was amazing. You've seen the videos on that. And now we're on our way back after the event. And we initially stopped at a place called Umadilla, just south of Atlanta, Georgia, and quickly realized we were going to move on to the next town and and find a place that was closer to a hub of sorts, because we're going to have to eat dinner afterwards. But all that to say, Georgia's beautiful, Tennessee is beautiful, but I'm excited to get back to Florida, and I should be back in time for tomorrow's show at 3 o'clock. All right. So everything's good. Let me just make sure that we're live across all platforms on Viva Barnes Law. .locals.com. Did I see Stacey Abrams, asks Pile G99. No, I haven't, nor did I see Fonnie Willis. I wouldn't mind seeing them. I mean, they've been in the news. We got some great stuff on the show for tonight. Before we get there, before we do anything, let me thank tonight's sponsor, Chef IQ. It's something that I use. It's something that is absolutely cool by way of tool. And I should say my wife uses it because she downloaded the app, because I'm a stubborn old school type guy. Like I say, you eat it if it's overcooked, and you eat it if it's undercooked. But if you want to avoid all of those issues to begin with, Chef IQ takes all of the guessing out of making sure you know when your meat is done. It's a digital thermometer that you put into the meat, and you can leave it in the meat as you cook it. And they have packs of 1, 2, or 3. Let me see if we see this here. 1, 2, or 3, depending on what you're cooking. You download an app, and it will track the progress of the meat as you're cooking it, depending on what meat you're cooking, how you want it cooked. It will tell you what the temperature is. It will tell you when it's going to be ready. It'll give you notifications when it is ready, and you will avoid fights as to whether or not the chicken is cooked enough, whether or not you overcooked the medium rare steak. It's amazing. You go to Chef IQ, you get the app, put in whatever you want, depending on what you're cooking, how you like it, and it'll walk you through the entire process so you can be a master chef in no time. Right now, you can get 15% off site-wide products. They have a lot more than just, let me see what they got here. They've got a lot more than just the thermometers. They've got stoves, crock pots, pressure cookers, amazing stuff. You can get 15% off right now if you use code VIVA. Go to chefiq.com. Chefiq.com, promo code VIVA will get you 15% off. All right, now I wanted to start with this, but it's a little bit, it's a dark, it's a tragic story. It's enraging, and people need to know what's going on. I'm going to have on, at some point next week, Gord McGill, who is a freedom fighter out of Canada, trucker. He's been sounding the alarm on what we are now seeing the consequences of by way of policy. For those of you who don't know, there was a horrendous accident on, I don't know what highway it was in Florida, but a pickup truck, for whatever the reason, decides to do a maneuver on the highway, pulling a U-turn across the highway at a service section turnaround. So you appreciate the truck driver is pulling a U-turn across 3-4 lanes of highway from the right across to the left to do a U-turn, because the idiot didn't want to do an extra 5 or 10 minute detour to do it safely on whatever off ramp would have been appropriate. I'm going to turn the volume down. Appreciate what you're witnessing right here. We're going to get into the politics of it in a second, because unfortunately there are politics involved. The man is on the far side of the highway, and you're going to see him pull across 4 lanes to do a U-turn right now across the highway, and this car from behind him careens into his pickup. All 3 passengers died, or all 3 persons in the vehicle died. There was a driver and 2 passengers. And you need to highlight the reaction or lack thereof of the driver. You got the passenger in his truck who looks like he's aware that they're doing something homicidally stupid, because the guy has now been charged. Appreciate this. am, the lack of any sense of urgency is enough to make you attribute malicious homicidal intent. This is the accident. The man's there. Now, I always say, like, in a time of crisis, urgent stress, you don't know how you're going to react. I think people are not going to react like that. So this guy here, this is a orange 4U28. The video's all across the internet now. 3 died in a crash in Florida after a semi-truck made an illegal U-turn colliding with the minivan. The minivan collided with the truck because it's pulling across 3 lanes of highway to do an illegal U-turn at a service, whatever they have for the emergency vehicles or police vehicles. A woman, 37, from Pompano Beach. A man, 54, died in the collision. The minivan's driver, a man, 30, from Florida, airlifted to the hospital where he later died. You want to know where the politics comes into this? It turns out that the driver is an illegal alien who crossed the border illegally, ended up in California, and somehow got his commercial driver's license. And don't take my word for it. And again, I had to double check this because you can't trust screen grabs on the internet, people. This is from the Florida something highway safety motor vehicle. What does the L stand for? I forget what the L stands for. And this is their press release of yesterday. Statewide release: illegal U-turn truck driver arrested for vehicular homicide. Damn right. As if there's ever going to be any justice in this insanity. St. Lucie County, August 12, 2025. State troopers responded to a crash on Florida's Turnpike occurring in St. Lucie County. The crash involved a minivan and a commercial semi-truck and trailer. Based upon our initial but ongoing criminal investigation, it is evident that the driver of the commercial semi-truck recklessly and without regard for the safety of others attempted to execute a U-turn, utilizing an unauthorized location. As a result of his actions, the 3 occupants of the minivan are now deceased. Listen to this. State troopers obtained criminal arrest warrant for the driver, Harjinder Singh, for 3 counts of vehicular homicide. During the course of this criminal investigation, with the assistance of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, state troopers determined that Harjinder Singh entered the states illegally, having crossed the Mexico border in 2018. Why is an Indian crossing the border into America illegally from Mexico? Has anybody ever thought about asking that question? I know some people have. The defendant obtained a commercial driver's license in the state of California under the federal authority delegated by ICE to Florida Highway Patrol. State troopers, through the Section 287 program, state troopers issued an ICE detainer. The actions taken by the defendant while operating a commercial tractor trailer are both shocking and criminal, said Executive Director Dave Kramer. 3 people lost their lives as a result of his recklessness, and countless friends and family members will experience the pain of their loss forever. Harjinder Singh is in custody on state vehicular homicide charges and immigration violations. He will no longer be able to damage and destroy the lives of Floridians and visitors. It's a little too late, but this is the tragedy that evil and stupidity can cause. At the conclusion of his state charges, he will be deported. The Florida Highway State Patrol remains committed to enforcing both state and federal law to ensure that people that are a danger to others face justice behind bars. And I just put out a tweet. The driver involved, illegal immigrant, got his commercial license in the state of California. How does an illegal immigrant get a commercial driver license in the state of California? Care to comment? Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, who's entered the realm of trolling Trump on Twitter. Gavin Newsom's putting out his all caps tweets with "thank you for your attention to this matter," like he's scoring cheap political points by trolling Trump on Twitter, by claiming to have ratioed Trump on Twitter. The idiot doesn't even understand what a ratio is. How does an illegal alien get a commercial driver's license? People think like truck driving is just like brain dead zombie activity. It's a skill that you have to train for, that you have to be licensed for. A truck like that doesn't operate like an ordinary vehicle. A truck like that requires training. It requires a degree of professionalism, despite what city folk think of truck drivers. How the hell is this happening in California, in Texas, in Michigan, in Massachusetts, in Iowa? I've been, talking with Gord McGill. He's going to come on and explain it. He talked about this when he was on my channel a while back, saying this is a serious problem that actually runs across the country. That you got the government bringing in illegals or bringing in immigrants, handing out commercial driving license like it's cotton candy. It's a skill that they do not have, that you do not have unless you've been trained for it. They get into these horrible, horrible accidents. And then the government is going to use it as a pretext to, on the one hand, either further regulate the trucking industry or argue for the automation of the trucking industry. One way or another, for the idiots out there who think you can bring in illegal immigrants and exploit them for cheap labor to work the fields, to work the factories. That's exactly what the Uni Party, I don't even want to blame Democrats alone for this. That's what the Uni Party is doing. It's good for big corporation. To bring in unskilled labor to be exploited for lower wages is good for the bottom line of big corporations. You give unskilled labor, I don't want to use the word professional, but skilled licenses, and this is what happens. And you go back now and you look at a lot of these highway accidents, these tragic, horrendous highway accidents involving big rigs that are killing dozens and dozens of people. You're going to find not a common thread. You are going to find statistical anomalies that can only be explained in nefarious manners. You're going to find statistical overrepresentation of who is involved in these wrecks, and you can't ignore it after a given point. So that's what's going on in Florida. 3 Floridians are dead because of the criminal negligence, not just of the truck driver, whoever the hell gave him his commercial license, and Gavin Newsom. So while Gavin Newsom tweets out stupidities, taking pride in, he thinks, ratioing Trump, he's got blood on his hands right now. I mean, this is what Gavin Newsom, I had to double check to see if this is in fact not a parody account or an unauthorized offshoot. Official account for the press office of Gavin Newsom. What does he tweet out? He's so amazingly hilarious. Oh, we totally humiliated the White House by ratioing them 3 times yesterday. A great day for America. Thank you, patriots. Gavin, you stupid jackass. 3 Americans are dead because your criminal state handed out a commercial driver's license to an illegal alien who then went on to kill 3 Floridians. Oh, but congratulations on the ratio. You don't even know what a ratio is. Not to sound totally petty. You don't get a ratio when you quote tweet a tweet. In fact, all that is showing that he's either got more bot accounts to engage with his tweets, or he's got more idiot followers who are more impressed with, entertained by a ratio, which is not a ratio, because you do not get a ratio when you get more hearts on your quote tweet than they got on the original tweet. Your ratio then when you respond in their tweet and then get more or a proportionate amount of likes and retweets. But that's what Gavin Newsom is focusing on. Hearts, retweets, and humiliating the president while his criminal state leads to the death of 3 Floridians. Serenity now. The lighting is going to change as we go through this because it's a little bit harsh because it's got a window lighting and then a light whiting here, but Barnes is going to come in and he's either going to come in or... Oh, geez. Barnes is coming in a second. Until then, let me just see what we got by way of Barnes. Sir, how goes the battle?
See me and hear me okay?
I can hear you. You might sound a little low, but I don't know if that's just for me. Let me see what Locals has to say. Give it another test, and I'm going to bring up a couple of...
All right, check.
Now, while we do that, let me see. We had a couple of good memes already, Robert. View tipped questions. Look at this. Welcome to the 1776 Lavaganza. Fantastic. Oh, gosh, Robert, we both look so much older in those pictures. And then we got this. This is Liam Sturgis, who I saw today. Louis the Lobster. It was fantastic. And that's Liam with Barnes. Robert, it was amazing. The event was truly amazing. I wish I could have, I attended a bit. Wish I could have attended a day long, but Ethan was patient and a good kid. But Robert, how goes the battle?
Good. Whereabouts are you guys? Somewhere in South Georgia or North
We
Florida?
are south of Atlanta, south of a Umadilla. Umadilla was the place we initially stopped, and then we went a little bit further down the road. But man, I was getting a little tense because I knew we had the show at 6, and I was like 5 o'clock, still didn't have a place to stay, but timing worked out perfectly.
That's good. Yeah, we got the Peace Summit that just took place in Anchorage, Alaska. That was the top voted topic at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We got D.C. suing D.C. over who gets to control and run D.C. We've got Democratic mayors being indicted for what looks like familiar kind of scams and schemes. We've got Coach Gruden, Chucky, winning against the NFL in a case that we've been covering for several years. We've got Trump's win to be able to control his own executive branch of government, to be able to control foreign aid, 2 different wins in front of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, no less. We've got people suing, blaming energy companies over heat waves. That case is back now before the Court of Appeals. We've got organ harvesting going on without people's notice and knowledge, the complicity of major universities, hospitals, academia, prisons, and other facilities who are engaged in this behavior, has now led to a major suit after Robert Kennedy disclosed some of that information a few weeks ago. We've got the Epstein files being hidden from grand jury disclosures, and we've got FOIA lawsuits starting to mount on the Epstein files, as a bunch of people have made a range of requests, and now those cases are finding their way into court. We've got the Supreme Court shadow docket case about can you arrest somebody in that ICE case that we were talking about. The Ninth Circuit refused to intervene, so basically prevented almost all forms of arrest for illegal immigrants located in the Central Valley, which is about 10% of all, including LA, illegals located in the country. So that case is now back before the Supreme Court to try to correct what the lower courts refused to. We've got Hamas victims, people who've been victimized by Hamas, suing the United Nations and United Nations-related agencies.
Mm-hmm.
We've got bear hunting is now legal there in the state of Florida. So you got to get your permit, and you need to go out there and get yourself some bears. We've got a mystery involving a Kroger CEO that might be unveiled in a lawsuit. Trans sports suits. We got AAP laundering government taxpayer money to force vaccines onto children. So got plenty of cases up tonight.
All right, Robert, we'll start with the Putin-Russia summit. I'm going to pull up a video just because I want your input as to whether or not you think Trump is doing what I think he's doing in this particular audio clip. It's only audio. They had their summit on Friday. I mean, it looks like it went well. We'll get into that in a second. And it looks like, as far as it goes, Zelensky has been utterly emasculated on an international scale. And I was actually just thinking that Zelensky basically understands it's going to end one way or another, and he can, either agree to it or it can happen without his consent. But listen to this audio clip of Trump answering a question, and you'll tell me if you think he's doing what I think he's doing in this clip.
Thank you for coming back to take questions. We saw that Russia continued its violence into Ukraine last night, launching even more drones. What did you make of that?
I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later.
On the table for discussions today, Mr. President, are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine.
Okay, so short clip. I mean, my theory, my idea is that I think everybody knows, I don't think Putin ever wanted to take all of Ukraine. I think this is Trump sort of setting it up so that when there's concessions, it's going to involve Zelensky giving or conceding some territory. What's your assessment of Trump's assessment? Is it does he believe it, or is this sort of setting the table for a concession, but that's going to be a win given how he's framing what Putin allegedly wanted?
Yeah, I don't know for sure what Trump thinks in that regard. I do think, at a minimum, from a presentation perspective, using Europe's argument against them is an effective mechanism to sell the peace deal. Now, this deal has been on the table all along. Russia has made this particular deal available since June of 2024, and the Western countries just kept pretending they weren't offering any deal. They just stuck their head in the sand. They're like, golly gee, why won't they offer a deal? They keep telling you over and over again what their deal is. Made it in a speech in June of 2024. It's comparable to what was offered all the way back. For those that don't remember, this all sort of kicked off really 20 years ago when we decided to officially and formally use Ukraine as a proxy to undermine Russia. The goal being to break up Russia, destroy Russia and the West be able to sort of pick its bones. And the goal was to use Ukraine to do it. And we did it first with a color revolution, an orange revolution there in 2004. You can read Stephen Cohen, the former Russian scholar who passed away some years ago. But talk about in live time. George Soros, with his Soros Foundation's main focus was the government in the country of Ukraine. Main source of money laundering, a lot of human trafficking, bioweapons research. No surprise, the Biden family was neck deep in Ukrainian corruption. The governments went back and forth between the anti-Russian and pro-Russian parts of the Ukrainian society. Eastern Ukraine is historically Russian, ancestrally Russian, ethnically Russian, speaks the Russian language, and never wanted to be part of Ukraine as a separate government anyway, dating back to 1991. By contrast,
hold up, Robert. Your audio, I think, needs to catch up. Okay, try it now.
Okay, yeah. How about now?
That's better.
By contrast, Western Ukraine is very anti-Russian, has been since World War II, when many of its members signed up with the Nazis. The Stefan Bandera, that was later killed by the Soviet Union when he was being protected in Germany. So that wing is the most anti-Russian. That was reinvigorated in the 90s. Early 2000s, and they joined up into hooligan gangs backed by oligarchs, sponsored a coup in 2014. First one was 2004. The second one was 2014, where once again the pro-Russian side had won the elections, and they didn't like that, so they overthrew them with what's called the Maidan coup, where they staged sniper shootings, blamed it on the government. They, in fact, were the ones culpable. A range of investigative reporters have shown this over the years. Oliver Stone detailed it in his documentary films Ukraine on Fire, of which there are two separate ones. And so from that point forward, the Russian areas of Ukraine, seeing their government overthrown, rebelled and wanted to restore the government or be independent in like a federated kind of system, like a United States of Ukraine. They rebelled, and the Ukrainian army, the portions that were Russian, turned on the Ukrainian coup governors, and it started in the Donbass in particular, but was also in Kharkiv, also in Odessa and other regions. And the Ukrainian government ruthlessly repressed it. In Odessa, while people were inside protesting, they lit the building on fire and murdered them live for the people to watch. They let out some of the worst, most violent, vicious gangs to engage in all kinds of nasty behavior, rape, abuse, killing children. See, Melania Trump is writing letters. She should be writing them to Zelensky, not writing them to Putin. Zelensky and Ukrainian leaders are far more responsible for civilian death and children death than any place else. That reporter saying, what about Russia hitting? That was actually Ukraine that was bombing Russia that morning.
That was where I again, it's fog of war, literally. Marjorie Taylor Greene was commenting on how Zelensky was the one trying to sabotage the peace talks by drone striking Russia. I say, okay, fine. If it's tit for tat, that's war. But I don't know which one caused or which one was the response to the aggressor.
The Western media just pretends that Ukraine doesn't do anything like this, even though they're the ones doing it all along. They accuse Russia of doing the things Ukraine does. They pretend Ukraine does the things that Russia does. It is Russia that has gone to extraordinary lengths to limit civilian casualties in this conflict for a range of reasons, some strategic, some political. But there's really no disputing that from any objective analysis. By contrast, Ukraine often has targeted civilians deliberately for terroristic purposes, tried to once again sabotage the nuclear facility there in Ukraine that is under Russian control. On the eve of this, they have constantly attacked civilian infrastructure that has only civilian purposes repeatedly and routinely in ways Russia has not returned the favor. Russia has the escalatory edge. They can escalate because they have nuclear weapons, amongst other weapons, in ways Ukraine cannot. This conflict was because they were going to continue the assault on the Donbass population that's Russian speaking, that wants to have Russian language in their schools and Russian language in the government offices, and is Russian by orientation, and had been repressed. And they started to launch a massive attack on them in February of 2022. The Ukrainian army was storming up on the gates of the remaining Donbass rebels and that basically forced Putin's hand. Russia came in. They thought they could remind Ukraine of its military prowess, Russia's military prowess. Ukraine came to the table, and they had previously agreed to 2 different agreements to stop the violence against the people in Donbass related to the Maidan coup, supported by Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator John McCain and Victoria Nuland in the United States, along with George Soros as the principal patrons. And what they did is the first Maidan agreement said they all guaranteed security, including Russia guaranteed Ukraine security. And they were supposed to abide by respecting the rights of the Russian people and population in eastern Ukraine, known as the Donbass region, principally. Donetsk and forget how you pronounce the other one with an L, the Luhansk or something like that. I get it wrong all the time. But Ukraine refused to honor them, and then they did Minsk II, where they finally said, "Okay, now we're really going to honor these agreements," and they violated them again. So there was concern in Russia that Putin was going to sign up for Minsk III. He had no interest in that. It has been clear to the Russians for some time that they need a permanent peace that resolves what they call as root causes. The root causes being the militarization, Nazification of the Ukrainian government as a tool to wage war, a proxy war on Russia. They need Ukraine to not join NATO, for NATO to quit, for Ukraine to quit harassing the Russian population regions of Ukraine. And for them, that means the 4 regions that have voted, 4 of the regions where the Russian army is located in eastern Ukraine, that are historically Russian, ancestrally Russian, ethnically Russian, and speak Russian, and have long stated for forever that they've never wanted to be part of the Ukraine. They've always wanted to be part of Russia. For most of their history have been. They voted in elections held pursuant to the Kosovo legal precedent. And for those that don't know, when Yugoslavia was broken up, the Germans and the Europeans took the lead. They didn't care one iota about constitutional limits. Europe didn't care one iota about the respecting territorial borders. This sudden, we just care so deeply about borders and constitution. Utter hogwash.
Robert, I'm going to highlight someone who I know you love in his infinite stupidity, who's putting out his proposals for how this war could end. McFaul, it's impossible that he's actually this. He can only be stupid, because this is not something you could say if you wanted to even say something that's a lie or mislead people without embarrassing yourself. He says, here's how the war could end. Michael McFaul was the professor of political. He was. Here we go. U.S. ambassador.
Russia. That's how embarrassing.
During the Maidan revolution, the Maidan coup, he says, "Here's how the war could end. Day 1, Ukraine agrees to use only peaceful means for unification. De facto, that's a giant concession to Putin. This literally makes no sense on its face. Day 2, NATO allies vote to accept Ukraine as a member."
That guarantees the war continues.
But
absolutely guarantees the war continues.
Robert,
there's no chance Russia will ever accept Ukraine as a member of NATO. We have long stated we have no interest in it, the United States, but this has long been Europe's goal. Europe's goal has been to use Ukraine to break up Russia, no matter they're willing to fight the war to the last Ukrainian. And they don't have the weapons to do so, or Ukraine itself doesn't have the weapons to do the fight, doesn't have the manpower to do the fight, doesn't have the willpower to do the fight, doesn't have the money to do the fight. So they took on a fight they cannot win. And they want us to keep bailing them out in order to help Europe and hurt Russia, because it does not serve the interest of the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian population overwhelmingly, by almost a 50-point margin, favors immediate peaceful resolution and does not want to continue this war. Zelensky holds power illegally, unconstitutionally. His term ended a year ago. What people were worried about Biden doing, Zelensky literally did.
No, but Robert, it would be against the Constitution of Ukraine, I am told, to hold elections now that they've declared martial law. And I'm like, what a great way to literally suspend a constitution, declare martial law and be a dictator for life, and then claim that you're respecting the Constitution by not holding elections. But, they can still have nightlife, and they can still have clubs, and they can still have social activities and whatnot. That's how serious the martial law is. Now, but the argument, Robert, is that the eastern provinces are going to vote Russian because all of that they did because all of the Ukrainians or Ukrainian loyals have left already. So it's sort of falsified.
There weren't hardly any Ukrainians there. So you can go all the way back. So these regions are 90 to 95% Russian. ancestrally, ethnically, linguistically, culturally, you name it. And when they used to vote in elections, they would vote 90% plus for the Russian side candidate that was more sympathetic with Russia. So the Crimea is like 98% Russian. The Donbass, 90%. Kherson and the other regions are more like 65 to 70%. And that's precisely the margins they won in choosing to be part of Russia. And what happened in Yugoslavia was we said that self-determination rules. This is what we said after World War I in the League of Nations. We said you have the right to determine your own national identity. Ukraine itself doesn't exist outside of this self-determination philosophy of the early 20th century. Well, that we extended that after the end of the Cold War. And we said if you want to break off from an existing government, particularly ones created by Soviet borders, which is like Ukraine, like Yugoslavia, like Czechoslovakia, like some of these other places, then you are legally entitled to do so. All you have to do is hold a plebiscite, a referendum. Russia objected to this at the time because they're like, okay, if you're opening the door to a whole lot of things, but it was the West, the United States and Europe, who insisted that you have a legal right to break off and form your own government, a legal right of secession. Well, each of the provinces where Russia is now in, the so-called territorial swap, is simply recognizing the Kosovo precedent. Each of these four regions has voted to join Russia. Crimea has voted to join Russia.
It's an amazing. Well, that you say it that way, where the argument is, well, it voted majoritarily only because all of the Ukrainians had been chased out. So you say if you get a decisive vote, you find a problem with it. When it's a borderline vote, you find a problem with it. And so the only way to not have a problem is to not do it. Like when Quebec voted to secede and they lost by like 1 or 2%. Well, then it was so close. Had it succeeded by 1 or 2%, people would have said, well, this is unfair because it's virtually half that don't want to. When it's a vast majority that do want to secede, they find another excuse to basically disqualify those results.
Exactly. And there's really been no dispute that the Donbass regions have been all Russian all along. The Russian police immediately, the local police, local government all shifted to being against the Maidan coup. So this all stems, and what is in the West, they have been miseducated. They've been lied to for years about the cause for the conflict, the reason why the conflict has progressed in the way that it has, what the Russia's objectives are, what Ukraine's objectives are, what Europe's objectives are, what the U.S.'s objectives are. It has been to wage a proxy war on a nuclear-powered country in order to break it up so the globalist crowd can line their pockets with power and wealth into perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
Trump in 2015 and 2016 campaigned explicitly against this. Said, why don't we get along with Russia? Wouldn't we be better off if we get along with Russia? Wouldn't we be better off if we get along with Putin? Why are we in the regime change proxy war business? Isn't this counterproductive? Why are we still in NATO? An agreement that only made sense during the Cold War and makes no sense after the Cold War. And so but that's why they launched Russiagate, was to derail, not only to illegally spy on his campaign, to sabotage his campaign, to sabotage his presidency and saddle him with the Mueller investigation, but most importantly, to try to extort and blacklist any effort at a meaningful rapprochement with Russia. That the biggest critic of this sort of globalist order with real power anywhere in the world, other than Trump, is Vladimir Putin. And that Putin has been the reason why he is demonized in American media and why most Americans have no understanding at all as to who he is and what Russia is about, is because he is such a dissident on the issues of globalist control. He believes in nationalism, believes in national sovereignty, believes that the various globalist priorities on social policy, on cultural policy, on economic policy are dangerous, believes in supporting domestic industry. It's basically the Donald Trump of Russia. And that's why he's deeply popular. His support he's not a dictator by any stretch. Zelensky is a classic definition of a dictator. Someone who holds power against the will of his people, outside of the constitutional term of his office, with the overwhelming 70% plus of the Ukrainian population wanting him out. Mm-hmm. That's who has who has locked up and suspended the opposing political party, locked up and suspended opposing religious movements, locked up and murdered opposing journalists, including American journalists. That's everything they accuse Putin of. Zelensky is guilty of in just the last 3 years. He is a high-profile, money-laundering, murderous criminal. So the question for Trump was, could he get out of this deep state conflict? The deep state loves this conflict because of how it saddles Russia. But a lot of people within the military hierarchy think it disserves us. It shows and exposes our weaknesses and vulnerabilities. That Russia has basically whipped NATO on the battlefield over and over and over again. That Trump has been lied to repeatedly about the casualty numbers. The casualty numbers are 10-1 on the Ukrainian side, not the Russian side. This is given away whenever there's needed to be an exchange of POWs or dead bodies. Ukraine can't come up with any. So Russia has them all because that's how one-sided the battle of attrition has been. Mm-hmm. Russia is dominating on the battlefield. Many Russian leaders in Russia's position would not have sat down with Trump. They would have said, screw this. The U.S. is unreliable. We're going to go forward. We're going to take whatever we want to take, and then they'll sign whatever we tell them to sign. Putin has been a long-standing believer in the best version of Trump, thinks that Trump believes what's best interest of America, and that he's smart enough to know what is in that best interest and to act on it. So consequently, he's been constantly offering Trump an exit ramp from the Ukrainian conflict. And it's the same one he offered all the way back at the beginning, where it's just slightly adjusted. Initially, it was just going to be the 2 Donbass regions, and then the rest would be Ukrainian, and that would it. Ukraine signed the agreement. Then they went home, and Boris Johnson intervened from the UK and said, you can't sign this, or we're going to cut off all your aid. So an agreement they'd already signed to, they reneged on. This was the 3rd agreement they'd reneged on. They reneged on Minsk 1, they reneged on Minsk 2, and now they were reneging on Istanbul 1. And yet, despite that, Putin has consistently, since last year, said, look, it's just the provinces that voted to be part of Russia. As long as you recognize they're part of Russia, as long as you agree you will not join NATO and won't have this huge military, that's it. We don't need to go any further. Europe has pretended that Russia has this huge goal to go into, you take all of Ukraine, take all of Europe. What's useful for Trump is now he's got the same peace deal Putin has kept offering. Trump appears to be finally willing to take, recognizing that Lady Lindsey Graham has been lying to him. General Kellogg has been lying to him. General Kellogg's daughter has been lying to him. People connected to Swampy Susie have not been forthcoming and honest about what's happening in that conflict. The sanctions are only going to hurt us, not Russia. The going further in this conflict will only crush Ukraine, not salvage Ukraine. Right now, Trump can say, look, here's a peace deal on the table that Europe said their great risk was Putin going and taking non-Russian regions of Europe. That's now gone by this peace deal. This peace deal saves Ukraine, saves Odessa, saves Kiev, saves the rest of their soldiers, saves the rest of their people, gives them a meaningful peace path going forward, something the U.S. and Russia together are willing to guarantee their security from any future foreign invaders and attackers, be able to help stabilize their society. If Ukraine has any future at all, they would sign this deal. But Zelensky doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. He cares about lining his own pocket. And he knows that he can't stay in power if there's peace. Europe knows its ability to break up Russia disappears when there's peace. Mm-hmm. So their goal is to sabotage this. The media's goal is to sabotage this. The so-called experts and think tanks want to sabotage this. They will continue to go to great lengths to prevent President Trump from signing a peace deal he's promising.
Hold up. Your audio needs to catch up again, but they said they'll go to great lengths to prevent him from signing a peace deal. Robert, let me read a few of the chats over here because some of them are on point. From Rumble, from Tin Stacks, $100. Thank you very much. God bless America. What would be the implication of an open and free Russia-America trade deal? Thank you, Patriots. Sean says, yes, Zelensky is illegal, and Putin asked who has legal authority to sign a peace treaty. And that was from Sean 487, and Sean 487 had one on the intro. But I mean, look, another one just came in. Let's see what this one's on. King of Biltong, craving a snack that's bold, authentic, and packed with protein. Biltong boasts over 50% protein, packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and more. Go to BiltongUSA.com. Code Barnes for 10% off. It's delicious. Get it. And the global chessboard continues to move. Do you think Trump can negotiate a deal before his term is up? I think he'll negotiate a deal. The only question is going to be whether or not Zelensky accepts it voluntarily or is left to his own devices to continue fighting in Russia without any support from the U.S. Because I could see Trump right now setting up the cards so that he says, look, this is the best it's going to get. We're not going to continue supporting Zelensky if he doesn't accept a deal that allows everyone to leave, save face, get what they need, and move on to peace. Then Trump just says, okay, we're done. And Zelensky, fight on your own, see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's what he has to do is to say, look, the U.S., Russia has agreed to offer very generous terms to Ukraine that preserves almost all of Ukraine's landmass, preserves all of Ukraine's population that actually wants to be in Ukraine, gets to stay in Ukraine. What's left of their army doesn't get devastated like it was about to get devastated in the next weeks and months in the Donbass region. It stabilizes peace and security in Europe, removes the risk of NATO from Russia's front door, and ends that for good, and starts a renegotiating a entrance of a START treaty of arms control, including AI and drone technologies, as well as intercontinental ballistic missiles and other weapons like that Russia has developed at a better pace than we have. And it would be good for peace to get some controls going back over again. Economic development, Russia keeping energy prices stable for the president, as well as rare earths that Russia has access to, and Arctic development that Russia has access to. The ways in which Russia gets along with everybody in the Middle East. Russia could be very helpful at getting a new nuclear monitoring peace deal with Israel and Iran. They may be able to help on the Gaza Strip related issues, on the Syria related issues that are percolating up in the Middle East. Be able to better negotiate with China without pushing Russia into a permanent wedding with China in terms of BRICS. Convert BRICS into less of an adversary and even at times a potential ally on a global trading basis. So every reason in the world from a geopolitical sound logic says that Trump is doing precisely the right thing. That's why the deep state will go to great lengths to prevent it. Europe will go to great lengths to prevent it. Zelensky will go to great lengths to prevent it. And they are only relying on the mass lies that have been told the American people for the last several years. Like finally the British press is acknowledging, maybe Ukraine's actually losing the war. And you can see some of the reply like, what? I thought Ukraine was dominating. I thought Russia had 10-1 casualty losses. Those are all lies. And hopefully President Trump realized if he doesn't get out of this, he'll get blamed for this.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is going to collapse. Ukraine is going to lose. That is inevitable. The question at this point is, does Trump get blamed for this and saddle his presidency with a failed promise, or does he deliver on that promise and deliver a peace agreement that's as significant and consequential as any peace agreement in the last century? So hopefully Trump will stick to his campaign promises and deliver what MAGA wants. If he does, he gives Ukraine a simple option. You either accept the deal in which there's something left for you, or you don't, in which there's nothing left for you. And Zelensky, if you don't sign the deal, we can still criminally prosecute you for all of the fraud and crimes you've been engaged in with your buddies and pals for 5 years. Maybe you should sign the deal. If you don't sign the deal, you and your buddies can be looking at criminal prosecution and extradition. Europe's in no position to negotiate anything. They are a complete failure of a continent at this point. The quicker we divorce from them, the better. And I think that's what Trump has started to recognize. So the peace element won out. Got the summit done. Contrary to what a bunch of people said, it was not a trap. Trump was not going to arrest Putin when he showed up. There was going to be no assassination attempt. This was a sincere effort by two men who are actually popular. Unlike Starmer, who is hated in the UK, unlike Macron, who is hated in France, unlike Merz, who is hated in Germany, unlike Zelensky, who is hated in Ukraine, the only leader in this whole affair that's popular are Viktor Orban, who has said Russia is one time to get out, the president of Hungary, President Putin, who's the most popular leader in the entire world, not named the president of El Salvador, and then President Trump. They're the only ones that have above 40% approval rating at home. All the others are in the 20s. So hopefully President Trump doesn't let them sidetrack him again, doesn't let them drag him into this constant European war, and does what he was always intending to do for over a decade, peace and rapprochement with Russia, peace and to end of the war in Ukraine, no more dependence on the EU and Europe, an independent nation looking to be independent globally for our own economic prosperity and security.
Amazing. Let me read two of these Viva Barnes Law chats, which are on point. What about the biolabs once this war is over? Putin likely to help provide information for Trump and Congress to investigate. That was from Schnookums. And Cliff Norman says, Russia occupied Crimea from 1783 until Khrushchev needed it, gave it to Ukraine, needed to give it to Ukraine. However, the Russian Navy since 1783 has been in Crimea. I'll get to the other tip questions in a bit. All right, well, that's it. I mean, we'll see where it goes. I think it's going to be a coerced behind the scenes. I know what Trump is telling Zelensky. It's going to happen one way or the other, with his permission public or without his permission public. So it's how he wants to save face. We'll see where that happens. Robert, speaking of making things safe and taking control, Trump took control over DC. I'm still trying to make sure I understand exactly what law it is that he invoked in order to federalize or bring in the National Guard for a period of 30 days. For those who are not exactly clear on what mechanism allowed Trump to do what he did in DC, which is to federalize, did he federalize local law enforcement, or did he just bring in the National Guard? And in virtue of what law did he do it, such that he only has a 30-day window before which he'll need congressional approval or congressional action in order to continue this?
So the Constitution gives Congress exclusive jurisdiction over everything related to the District of Columbia. So they control it. They're not a state. They didn't get their constitutional authority by joining the republic like a state. Instead, they are literally the source of the federal government that Congress has exclusive jurisdiction entirely. Congress has chosen to give them home rule and delegated some of their control over the district to these local bodies. As part of the home rule law, Congress authorized the president, in the cases of emergency, to take over the policing of D.C. for federal purposes. Now, the D.C. is suing D.C. over D.C. Leave it to D.C. to somehow get this to do this. They're claiming that the president doesn't have that it's limited discretion. It's similar to all the other cases, that they want to limit the president's authority under the statute, even though Congress could take away all their power for forever. The fact that they're suing, saying we demand to have control of the police returned to us, and they want the judicial branch to prevent the president from exercising his legislatively authorized powers under the Home Rule Act passed by Congress. What it really shows is what Trump needs to do, what Congress needs to do, is end home rule in D.C. No more special state courthouses in D.C., no more federal courthouses in D.C., no more D.C. City Council, no more D.C. Mayor's Office, none of that nonsense. We need to have an independent, congressionally run district of corruption if we're going to be stuck with it, not have these local corrupt hacks be able to cover up things like the Seth Rich murders, be able to cover up for things going all the way back to the Clinton eras when a lot of deaths managed to never get prosecuted or even meaningfully investigated by the district of corruption. They needed to never have their own police force, their own judges, or any of it at the state or federal level. And this just highlights it. Trump should win the case, but who knows, because it's the district of corruption where the courts are going to decide the issue.
I guess I just am curious as to who in the general public in DC would even support this. Like, is this going to be the culture shift?
I guess the DOJ lawyer that Pam Bondi had failed to fire, who was busy throwing Subway sandwiches at police officers.
It's unreal when we talk about the rot within these institutions. That is exactly who, part of the DOJ, part of the FBI, the 30 some odd thousand employees, and that includes people who are activist zealots like that. So what does happen at the end of the 30 days? What has to happen? Congress has to dictate
well, the courts are going to get involved right away. So there's these hearings coming up right away as to whether or not the courts are going to let President Trump control the D.C. police force or not. I think what it will do is it will highlight the need for Congress to go back in and make this clear once and for all, or just take away home rule. And what they should do is take away home rule. Whether or not there's the votes in the House and the Senate, yet to be determined. But as people discover that this is utterly unnecessary, it's basically giving jobs and money away to Democratic politicians. That's all the home rule does. Then I think they'll start to recognize that the home rule experiment has failed, and it's time to scrap it.
Robert, let me read a few of the tipped questions in vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Howard the Duke says, wondering if anybody caught Richard Surrett's coast-to-coast interview with raw milk champion Forrest Marady. I'm taking his appearance as a sign that this issue is gaining wider coverage. He seems to think that Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s HHS is sympathetic to the plight of the Amish farmers. Thoughts? Link to his book posted separately. I haven't heard that episode. Richard Surrett's, it's fantastic.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that yet either. But yes, Kennedy has spoken out repeatedly on behalf of Amish farmers, and that he thinks raw milk should not be federally controlled or regulated in the way it currently is by the FDA asserting power they legally never had. And so we'll see if there's remedial efforts made by Secretary Rollins. She has reached out to 1776 Law Center for us to discuss it with her further, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if we get some progress. The Amish helped elect President Trump, helped elect Republicans to the Senate, to the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. So these issues are issues that made a difference in the election. Hopefully, people keep their promises, and we get some remedy for the Amish going forward.
Robert, I guess this would be the good segue into Trump's victory on the foreign aid, where at least he's allowed to govern. What's the situation on that? This is, I forget which, this is a question of him determining foreign spending. And I think he was enjoined from, say it again?
And USAID.
USAID or USAID. We cannot say that it's USAID. So he was enjoined from doing it at first. What happened? Is it a 2-to-1 split decision at the appellate level?
It is. The D.C. Court of Appeals reinstated his right to do so, pointed out that the Impoundment Control Act that he used to seize these funds and freeze these funds, they don't permanently prohibit their expenditure. They just delay their expenditure until Congress can vote on the requisite rescissions. The D.C. Court of Appeals, getting some of the few conservatives that are up there, pointed out that the Impoundment Control Act enforcement mechanism is solely through the Comptroller General, who is an employee of the legislative branch, but the Comptroller General has to take certain procedural steps to initiate and instigate action, and there is no private right of action of anybody to sue simply because they're not getting to stay on the government payroll. And thankfully, D.C. Court recognized that and said that's the limits on review. Thus, there's no cause of action. You've got to go to the Comptroller General and convince them to sue, and if not, nothing you can do about it. So that was a good ruling. And then another one was the Consumer Protection Board, where they were saying they were trying to deny Trump the right to fire agencies and employees within his own executive branch. They recognized that, no, that too is constitutional power. So back-to-back big wins by Trump before no less than the D.C. Circuit, which is usually a very difficult place to get anything positively done for the Trump agenda.
Let me read these. These are over on CommieTube. Without us, NATO has no balls. Maybe it's time for them to be neutered. And there was another one that just came in, which said, Victor David Hansen reports 1 million Russian casualties with 400,000 plus in Ukraine. Could Robert be wrong?
No, that's completely wrong, and that's fake data. Here's the problem. Like, Victor Hansen bought into all of this. Most American observers have bought into all the fake propaganda about Russia. You ask a typical American about the history of this dispute, they have no clue. They have no clue about the Maidan coup, no clue about the Orange Revolution, no clue about like if you tell them, what about Minsk 1 and 2? They don't know what it means. They think they know what the Budapest Memorandum means. It doesn't mean what they think it means. That when the Soviet Union was breaking up, Russia was going to keep all nuclear weapons. There was no provision for any of the ex-republics to have nuclear weapons. But Ukraine advocates try to pretend the Budapest Memorandum really means everybody in the West guaranteed Ukraine's peace from Russia, which would make no sense at the time if you understood what that was about. It was, we would only recognize Ukraine as independent if it did not have nuclear weapons. That was our demand as a precondition. It was not give up nuclear weapons that they don't have, that they didn't control, that they didn't possess, that they had no legal means or right to in the first place, in exchange for permanent Western protection that is completely made up and fictional. You won't even see that argument prior to 2014. But they don't understand that. So the easiest way to respond to the casualty list is, why is it every time there's a body switching time where they say, okay, Ukraine, you return the Russian dead bodies in your control, and we return the Ukrainian dead bodies in our control? Why is it Russia has 10 to 20 times more dead Ukrainians than Ukraine has dead Russians? Why Russia have 10 to 20 more POWs than Ukraine has Russian POWs? This has been it's some of these lies are some of the dumbest lies, and it's sad that even smart people like Victor Hansen completely buy it, because they buy Fox News, they buy the Institute of War. They don't understand all these publications do is lie. The mainstream publications have been false all the way through. If you followed places like the Duran, you're not surprised by what happened this weekend. If you're not, that's when you're shocked, because you didn't realize you've just been lied to for the last 4 years.
I mean, people can take Al Jazeera for what it's worth or what they think it's worth, but Al Jazeera reports about 1,000 bodies of Ukrainian soldiers have been exchanged for the bodies of 19 Russian soldiers. That was as of July.
Repeatedly. There have been periods of time where Ukraine has tried to delay any disclosure because they don't want anyone to know they don't have any dead bodies. And if you knew the nature of the Russia has a massive advantage in the air. Russia has a massive advantage in munitions. Russia has a massive advantage in the skill of their manpower. Well, that's all you had to know. And they were deliberately choosing a slow, methodical battle of attrition to limit casualties on their side and maximize casualties on the Ukrainian side, while limiting Ukrainian civilian casualties. They've gone to great lengths. They've done it in ways, let's just say, a certain country in the Middle East has not done.
Now you're going to get the hate, Robert. Let me get through some of these Viva Barnes tips. Sorry. My transmission went out. Need your help. Without my car, I cannot earn much money. We are all beggars from God. And there's a give, send, go, Dumodi. I do not endorse any of these things that I have no personal knowledge of, but Dumodi, hopefully you'll be able to fix that. It was great seeing you, Robert. Hold on, I'll get to these here. Everyone hug your friends today. I lost my 14-year-old best friend over the night. She got me through addiction to opiates, divorce, isolation, and laid next to my mother 24/7 the last year and a half, and she's recovered from leukemia from the shot. That's and then we got what about the U.S. biolabs? We got that Russia occupied Crimea. Fun fact: Putin banned. We're already at the bottom now. Sadly, Fox News keeps selling Russia bad, Israel good. Says hope for better. And fun fact: Putin banned GMOs in 2016. That's from RB Ham. Ryan PD911 using that same theory of right to self-determination theory. Why can't American citizens use that theory to self-determine our state borders, such as Minnesota, where 90% of the state does not want to be ruled by the Twin City metropolitan area? Should we have the same human rights?
International law, that is now recognized. Now it's now recognized in the U.S. by U.S. courts because of the Civil War, but internationally, that is what Kosovo recognizes. And we just don't want to be. And like Europe just says the dumbest things. They propose things that are not peace. They want the war to continue, even though any objective analysis concludes they're going to lose. And they would. What is it? Their goal was sucker Trump into leading Russia a little bit more. Then when Ukraine fails, blame Trump. And you get a 2-for-win. You get him to sabotage and betray his base by staying in the war. And then when the war fails, you get to hammer him a second time. At some point, Trump figured this out. And it's like, I'm not for this.
Your audio needed to catch up again. It got tinny for a second. But yes, the idea being that if Europe does it, then if Europe keeps pushing the war, they get to blame the failure to settle this peacefully on Trump, and they get to continue their war with Russia, or their proxy war with Russia, and it's a win-win for them. But Robert, speaking of hellhole states that have hellhole leadership, Minnesota might be one of them. New Orleans, New Orleans is a city, so in Louisiana, but it's as good a segue as I could have gotten, Robert. This is flipping hilarious what's going on with the mayor, LaToya Cantrell, who has been indicted along with her bodyguard because they allegedly did exactly what Fani Willis and Nathan Wade were alleged to have done, although Nathan Wade wasn't her actual bodyguard, maybe like in the movie sense. LaToya Cantrell has been indicted. I don't know how many charges it is. It's fraud, perjury, submitting a false affidavit. She and her bodyguard apparently were having a romantic affair. I don't know if it was a literal affair. I don't know if she was married at the time, but I'll check that up while you're talking on this. She's been indicted because she was concealing that affair and then using his status as a bodyguard to go on lavish vacations, personal sexy time under the pretext of bodyguard stuff. Then he was indicted and she was asked to show texts and whatever. And apparently she deleted some of the texts and apparently she filed a false affidavit, concealed the payments, even though among private text messages, they were acknowledging that this was potentially felonious behavior. Look, an indictment is just allegations. They need to be proven in court. But based on the evidence submitted in that affidavit, it seems like they're dead to rights. Like they were acknowledging that this was felonious and her cover-up is more culpability. If I've missed any details, flesh it out. But what do you think is going to happen to the mayor of Louisiana? I was actually just listening to people's reactions to this. And there are some people saying she had a prior scandal involving credit card expenses in her, I forget what her position was at the time. But people are like, well, let her finish her term and then, we'll get someone else. What do you think happens to her now that the feds have actually gone after pretty big political targets?
It basically shows that the Democratic Party, the way it tends to operate is as a constant money laundering grifting machine using government taxpayer dollars to do it. And here what you have is very similar, as you note, to what Fani was doing. And what that tells you is that this is commonplace. What Letitia James and Schiff are doing in other contexts. Letitia James and Schiff are running mortgage fraud schemes and then other forms of getting money to line their pockets. The would-be fake governor of Georgia was getting a lot of government money lining her pockets in ways that still haven't been explained. And what you had with the mayor was all you do is scratch a little bit under the hood, or she upset somebody, I guess, with power, decided to just highlight all the different scams that these Democratic mayors typically do and these politicians typically do. And what you have is, in order to get government money to live large, they sometimes take gifts from lobbyists and other people. She's accused of doing that, tickets in particular, travel, tickets to games, tickets to high-end events that are expensive. Somebody gives them to you as a way to live the high-end lifestyle. The other aspect of it is faking getting government money to go on a private vacation, but bill it as a government vacation, or get government pay for work you didn't do. And this was very similar to what Fani Willis did, and what he did, Nathan Wade. Same thing here. They did fake timesheets. So they submit fake timesheets. I guess he was working overtime, all right. It depends on how you define that, but he was working something. It just wasn't what was in the job description, at least not the official one.
My fat fingers can't highlight the text. I just wanted to highlight the text. Her prior scandals were for allegedly having used city credit cards for $9,000 in personal expenses. They're just so stupid with what they do and how they do it. And then when they get caught, I think she submitted a false affidavit saying that they didn't do what they were alleged to have done. And they find text messages of them being warned, this is potentially felonious. You can't be doing this. And they went ahead and did it anyhow because they're too bloody cheap to pay for their own vacations. Unreal.
It's the nature of the permanent criminal bureaucracy. It's why they got so enraged at Trump getting this to decide who is hired and who is fired, who gets money and who doesn't, because this has been one big, long grift at every level of government. And this is just the latest example of it. Now we got even more evidence of the scope and scale of Adam Schiff's criminality this week.
Okay, so hold on. Schiff. Okay, now we're talking about the Russiagate criminality, not his alleged mortgage fraud criminality. It's tough to keep up with these scoundrels. Robert, this is, okay, look, so we've all been giving Kash Patel and Dan Bongino a lot of flack for the Epstein stuff. I think some of us have evolved to say, okay, fine, they may have been better off saying things differently, but at the end of the day, the inaction now is on DOJ Pam Bondi's desk. When it comes to other, big political targets, and I say this not in terms of retribution, but in terms of justice, they've delivered on their investigations, and now the feds have delivered on their indictments with LaToya. Maybe they're going to say that's a small political, we want Epstein, yada, yada. Fine. But now they've gone after Schiff. And I believe what Patel in his statements have basically said now, like, we found what was basically confidential or information that was never intended to be made public. We have declassified it. We've given it to Congress, and it's on Pam Bondi's desk, and it's now time for them to do whatever congressional investigations, oversights they want to do, and for Pam Bondi to do whatever indictments she wants to do. But the bottom line of what they found out from Adam Schiff is that during the Russiagate scandal, he literally colluded with his internal staffers to leak, they call it derogatory, but compromising classified information on Trump, specifically to harm him, specifically knowing that it was illegal because the whistleblower told them, like, this is illegal, you can't do this. And they said, don't worry, we won't get caught. And Schiff for Brains is the one who was revealing this or leaking this to the media, classified derogatory information to take down Trump. Two things, steel manning the arguments. And Schiff has already made this one. One argument is going to be that this same whistleblower already brought out these allegations back in 2017, and the FBI did nothing with it because they were baseless. I know what my response to that's going to be. But Robert, who was in charge of the FBI back in 2017 when they could have taken action on this?
Initially, James Comey, and then and Andrew McCabe, and then after them, Christopher Wray.
Okay, so I knew that answer. Now,
and then Bill Barr, because Sessions was never involved in any Russia-related issue while he was Attorney General because he disqualified himself. So Rod Rosenstein was. So all the rogue, corrupt actors were the ones making decisions about which investigations went forward and which ones were suppressed, like this one was.
So nothing happened of this in 2017. I mean, I guess, how do you now explain that they're giving it a second look?
What is this? Gabbard keeps going through and documenting with the help of both Patel and Bongino at various junctures and other agencies, documenting the scale of the criminality in Russiagate and the scale of the cover up in Russiagate. And so that just keeps coming out, coming out, coming out. Trump is putting pressure. Also, the ability to get the peace deal done. The peace deal this weekend can only really work if you don't have Schiff and Brennan and Clapper and Comey and that crowd running around trying to say Russian agent, Russian agent, Russian agent. So the reason why they did Russiagate wasn't just to sabotage and spy on Trump. It was to prevent a détente with Russia, with anybody doing a détente with Russia, because the globalist crowd knows their greatest risk on a geopolitical world stage is if the U.S. and Russia align against globalists. They know if Trump and Putin align, globalism is in its death throes, and so that's why they're going to go ballistic. But that's what all these other cases are about. These were the globalist chief advocates in the Senate, in the House, in the intelligence community, and in the law enforcement community. And it's one more illustration where they knew in 2017, prior to the impeachment of first impeachment of President Trump, that the Schiff was consistently conspiring to leak classified information to create a warlike condition and sabotage peace. It's as you get.
Okay, I had to pause you there because your audio. I will figure out what the compression issue is on the audio. But if I interrupt you, Robert, it's only because you've started going tinny again. It is, in fact. So, by the way, part of this results from the fact that they reopened this investigation because they have obtained newly what was hitherto undisclosed information that they've declassified and released. It is, in fact, the case that they were thinking Hillary Clinton would win, I don't know, in 2020 or something. When was it that Schiff was promised to become head of the CIA?
Oh, he thought that was going to happen in 2016.
Okay.
But as soon as it didn't, then he goes from the House to the U.S. Senate, and he's busy committing daily crimes and mortgage fraud, but also committing these other bigger crimes in Russiagate, and that's a 10-year statute of limitations. So they can clearly add that to his mortgage fraud charges, and hopefully there needs to be some consequence for somebody, or people will lose faith and confidence that our government is capable of being trustworthy in the future. So we'll see where it turns out, but it's promising that we're seeing more action on the Russiagate front. Promising we're seeing potential peace in Russia, because that was what they were trying to do all this Russiagate to prevent and prohibit, is that peace. And then you have what the courts are doing, and what was not quite the cover-up people made it out to be. But the Epstein Files case is not going away, and we had a ruling on whether the grand jury records could be disclosed in New York, and a new lawsuit that's the beginning of many to come on the Freedom of Information Act, suing Pam Bondi over hiding Epstein files.
One last question on the Schiff stuff before we get into this, because it's also a question that Trump haters are going to ask. They're going to say, look, other than the fact that it's classified, and I know that in and of itself is it's a criminal act and borderline treasonous. Some people are going to say, well, if the leak of the classified info was still accurate info that was derogatory on Trump, then though Schiff is bad, I mean, they might consider him a whistleblower. I don't remember the information that Schiff was leaking, but because it's classified does not necessarily mean that it's accurate intel or accurate info.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, and from a legal perspective, all that matters is that it's classified. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. Doesn't matter whether it helps disclose things or not. That he leaked classified information. Now, I think you should have a justification defense, but that they generally have not given a justification defense in classified document cases. So Snowden, for example, Assange, for example, could not argue that they were justified in doing what they did, and that it was more important they release it than they hide it, because of the public policy that benefited more from the release than non-disclosure. But that defense is generally not recognized in places like the Eastern District of Virginia, where they typically prosecute these kind of whistleblower type cases, classified information cases. So I don't think Schiff has much defense, in my view.
Okay, and I say, like, at this point, with what Patel said and what Tulsi Gabbard said, if Schiff is not indicted, or at least if charges are not brought, I think the door is being opened for Trump to get rid of Bondi because it's going to be egregious inaction that's going to actually embarrass J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel at this point, where they basically said accountability is coming and we've done what we needed to do, and now it's on the desk of Congress and it's on the desk of Pam Bondi. So bring those charges sooner than later, or don't, and get an attorney general who will. What's the latest in Epstein? So we had the Florida case where the judge said, no, we can't release the grand jury testimony. What happened in New York?
The Southern District of New York, which has different rules, which says that when the public would have a justified interest in it, you generally should disclose. Refused to disclose. But what was interesting was his reasoning. Three things. He certain facts that we did not previously know came out that I had suspected were the case. Bondi's kind of hiding behind the grand jury because what the judge confirmed is that they never used the New York grand jury to do what's called an investigatory grand jury. So an investigatory grand jury is really where secrecy should come from. That's why I think the judge is wrong in his ruling. But investigatory grand jury is when you don't know where the case goes. And you're like, okay, we got a lead that something's going on here. We're going to use the grand jury to subpoena witnesses, documents and records and secrecy so we can try to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then you have what's called an indictment grand jury. An indictment grand jury is you already know who you're going to indict. You're not using it to investigate. And you just send in your lead agent to repeat what all the facts are in the case. They can be hearsay. You don't have to present evidence within the rules of evidence of any level. So they can just repeat whatever they heard or said they want the indictment to be. And then you get a grand jury to indict because typically they don't ask questions. They don't know what their rights are. We're going to try to fix that in time at 1776 Law Center. But, at this point, the most normal Americans don't know what their rights are as a grand juror. And so what the judge confirmed is that, first of all, this wasn't an investigative grand jury. So their investigative information came from somewhere else. It means there's no excuse to say, oh, there's all these records we can't disclose because they're grand jury records. No, they're not. The grand jury didn't even request the records. That isn't where you got the records. You already had the records. You developed them without using the grand jury. So that excuse by Bondi doesn't fly by what the judge said. The second thing the judge said was not only was there no investigative grand jury, he said in this case almost all the grand jury records were already made public. So his point is that you were so limited in what you use the grand jury for, there's almost nothing that's still private or confidential. And then he pointed out that the government really didn't claim any strong argument for why the few things that are still secret have any public bearing. And that tells me that this was mostly a disguise. It was Bondi saying, geez, I really wish I could get it, but golly gee, it's hidden behind the grand jury. That's complete garbage based on what this judge ruled. Now, I think they still could overturn this judge because I think he still had a more restrictive interpretation of the public justification for release of files, and it's a problem. It also highlights the need for legislative reform. Federal law should change to make clear that you can never hide grand jury records that it should be presumed to be public records unless they are proven otherwise by some government actor, because that standard was not properly applied here. So I disagree with the judge's ruling, but what it really tells us is that most of the Epstein files were never grand jury files.
I don't want to say seemed obvious, but that was what people were saying at the time. Like, okay, now they've just passed the buck. They know damn well in Florida they're not going to release the grand jury transcripts or whatever it was because they, by law, have their hands tied. And we had called it. It came out that way, and it looks like Pam Bondi wants to make it look like she's making progress, but in a way that she knows will not actually lead to any progress. Robert, before we get too far behind, let me bring up some chats over here. We got Cultivated Mind says, I drink raw milk every day. It's delicious, and all other pasteurized milk tastes burnt to me now. I just don't drink milk because it's so disgusting, but I not pasteurized, just regular skim milk. I grew up on skim milk because my mother thought skim milk was healthier. Like it was blue, watery and blue, disgusting looking milk. Jeff, that was the skim milk, not the raw milk, which Amos Miller. Yeah, I got it was Water Buffalo raw milk, and it was flipping delicious. On the day of the summit, Fox News coverage was horrendous, constantly calling Putin a monster. I think if Zelensky 86 is the deal, that's how you use the term without it being misconstrued. Trump is off the hook on that promise. He brought Putin to the table twice, agreed. And the global chessboard continues. Do you think Trump can negotiate a deal before his term is up? Okay. And we'll get to the vivabarneslaw.locals.com chat in a bit. Robert, what do we move into now? What's the segue?
Well, the people have filed a bunch of FOIA requests. We reviewed that at the 1776 Law Center conference this past weekend here in Chattanooga. Going to be putting up more intel and information about how people can use the Freedom of Information Act to FOIA the Fed based on the success of the George Gammon case, and then also other agencies for their own records and other people's records. But what people are doing is using FOIA to ask for a whole bunch of Epstein files, including what Pam Bondi has said or not said about the Epstein files. The Bondi is slow rolling those document disclosures, slow rolling whether those documents even exist. Slow rolling whether or not they should be provided in an expedited format pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. So they sued pursuant to Section 552 of the Title V of the United States Code that governs all the different agencies.
Let me interrupt you there for a second because it was muffling out. What's the provision of law? Anybody can file a FOIA request, and it's as easy as going online and making the request. The lawsuit itself is a little more complicated once they've either did not respected the delay within which to provide the FOIA. But what's the provision of law?
So Section 552 of Title V is what entitles you to seek judicial remedy and relief when you are denied any aspect of document request pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. And so now there's already lawsuits pending. There's more lawsuits incoming. Judicial Watch has lawsuits incoming. One way or another, Epstein files are going to have to be, a bunch of them are going to have to be disclosed. So Bondi's incompetent effort to close the door on it was just that, incompetent, because it will never lead to closing the door on the Epstein files. Sooner or later, they will be released by somebody somewhere, whether it's pursuant to the Attorney General, whether it's pursuant to Congress, or whether it's pursuant to the courts.
I'm giving everybody the link here. And look, I've been told by a man who's much smarter than me, Mike Benz, if you're going to go somewhere, that the best place to start is Acosta's transcript, his interrogation from 2019. And then if you really want to get to it, it's even earlier. It's Acosta's plea deal with Epstein back in 2009. And that's where you want to start. I've been told that's where you want to start. And I'm not necessarily in a position to do FOIA requests. But if that's where you want to go, the Acosta 2019 transcript is where you might get a whole heck of a lot of more doors opening from the answers that Acosta gave as relates to why he gave Epstein that sweetheart plea deal back in 2009 when he was told Epstein is intelligence, don't touch him. Okay. Do I look terrible? I feel like I look like bloated, and I'm certainly shiny because of the unfortunate lighting. But what do we move on to, Robert?
Oh, we got a bunch. We got the board topics about AAP, the American Association of Pediatrics, stealing taxpayer money to try to lobby for Big Pharma. We got Coach Gruden beating the National Football League. We got a CEO mystery that might be explained by a lawsuit involving Kroger and Jewel, the musician. We've got a beverage company escaping a class action. Turns out 100% all natural is just fine, even when it's not 100% nor all natural. We've got a heat wave death being blamed. We discussed this case before, but now there's a chance the Court of Appeals in Washington may reinstate that crazy case. We've got organ harvesting lawsuits. We've got Florida allowing black bears to be hunted. We've got victims of Hamas suing the United Nations here in the United States. A shadow docket case on ICE, and the painting that wasn't, the comedy of errors case that ended just recently in Illinois.
Now, I'm less familiar with a few of these because I was driving all day and I did my best to listen to articles. But let's start with the ones. Let's start with the AAP. That one I'm not at all familiar with. That was the board's top pick. What's that about?
So the American Association of Pediatrics, supposed to be representing children's doctors in America, has become a captive tool of Big Pharma. They've been receiving, now they are, for example, right now suing Robert Kennedy to try to force parents to have to give certain vaccines, so-called vaccines, to their children against their informed consent. Robert Kennedy is saying that should not be done against their informed consent and is not recommending it for the COVID vaccine for children because it is, unless the child is uniquely vulnerable to COVID, because it is seen as having more risk than reward based on the available data, including over 180 scientific and medical studies on the subject. AAP is suing him to try to force it back in. And that is because, in part, the AAP is really a big pharma lobbyist in disguise. And what shocks some people is that they get money from the government. State and federal government is being given money to then turn around and lobby the government on behalf of big pharma. Elon Musk called this the George Soros scam. Because what it is you figure out you can bribe a government official to give you 100x rate of your bribe, and then you can turn around and use that to lobby everybody else on government at scale. And he goes, it's a money laundering, influence laundering scheme and scam. And that's what it appears to me the AAP is also doing. And that's where all these NGOs should be looked at. What the Democratic mayor of New Orleans was indicted for, you can indict almost all of these democratically aligned, Soros-oriented NGOs because they engage in the same form of fraudulent scam or scheme in one way, shape, or form.
Well, now let's talk about schemes involving doctors or medicine. The organ harvesting from the inmates in Alabama is kind of horrific, because when you're told that they died suddenly and that their organs were then harvested, not for medical use, but for, scientific research, you then can start asking questions as to whether or not there's any money exchanging hands and whether or not there's any financial incentive in having inmates being killed prematurely or dying prematurely. The context for this is that inmates in Alabama prison system, at least one family discovered that their family members had died in prison, had died suddenly. They don't know what happened. I'm not exactly sure if we know how the inmate died, if it was violent, if it was cardiac arrest, whatever. They died suddenly. They did an autopsy, as the family, in retrospect, says they would have consented to. But after the autopsy, they didn't put the organs back in and allow for a proper burial. They gave the organs to the University of Alabama for research purposes without the consent of the inmate or the family, presumably. Now, one of the questions I had is how they knew of the provenance of the organs, and it seems that the organs were tagged in terms of provenance, and that the students knew that these organs were coming from inmates, and they had ethical concerns with this. I don't know how the story broke, but a number of the family members are suing a number of entities for, I don't know what the headers of damages are going to be, but for unlawfully harvesting the organs of their loved ones without any consent. And before you get into the legal side of it, what the University of Alabama has done, which is even more deceitful, is now removed the tags of provenance from the organs so that students no longer know, or nobody knows, where these organs on which they're researching are even coming from, thus bypassing any attempt at future justice. Robert, I don't know what the damages are, what the state of the law is. To me, it seems like a no-brainer in terms of violating human dignity. I don't know if it would be desecration of a corpse. What of the legality of this? I don't know if it's a class action or joinder of claims of the family members against the prison system and University of Alabama.
Well, I guess it's also another coin in the Alex Jones was right jar. He's been screaming about organ harvesting for a while. It's usually something you'd see in dystopian movies. Maybe a Van Damme movie, wakes up in a bathtub and missing organs, and he's been subject to illicit organ harvesting. That organs are a very valuable asset out there, whether it's for experimental investigation, or experimental use. This is human tissue is the ultimate value. And you see a lot of dystopian scientific sci-fi films that, play off of this. Well, it turns out after Robert Kennedy reported about a month ago that hospitals were basically killing people towards the end of their life and then harvesting their organs in order to harvest their organs. Now we find out that prisons, universities, and hospitals are working together to harvest people's organs without their informed consent, without their approval. Now that violates in Alabama. Various states have what's called an anatomical gift law, which basically makes sure that whatever you give of your own organs or body goes to where you say it goes, not where somebody decides to steal it off of you. So that's the first violation.
And let me interrupt you so you can catch your audio up as well. I just brought up a chat that said that they were getting rid of the organs because it would have showed that they were getting chemicals or certain poisons in prison. Have you ever heard of anything like that, Robert?
Yeah, that can be the case. There's suspicion that they deliberately kill people in order to get their organs once they realize the value of their organs, that their lives are more valuable.
It's Alex Jones. I think the darkest of black pills that that was ever presented to me was not just the abortion leading to the trade of fetal parts, but that live fetuses would have an extra high market value on the black market, and so they would do these talk people into late-term abortions, so they could dispose of fetuses that were not even necessarily dead yet, so they could experiment on them. And I mean, that's just straight out of like the human centipede level horror. The idea in Canada, they're doing this now as well by presuming organ donation, and that it's presumed unless you opt out, and you can't even opt out after a certain point in time, and you don't even need to be dead. That a coroner can say you're close enough to death even though you're not there yet, and they're literally going to be harvesting the organs of living people who don't have strong advocates by their side, so like the elderly, the homeless, people with no family, and literally harvesting the organs of the living because a coroner says we get to make a lot of money doing this right now, and though they're not dead, let's declare them dead enough to collect their organs. Sorry, I cut you off. What was the second part of the legal basis of this claim?
The conversion. So this is property. You have a recognized property interest in your own body, and the estate has a recognized property interest in your body. So they've converted organs that they recognize are of value to their own personal use. So conversion claim. And then a often backup tort claim in the United States is the tort of outrage. Sometimes it's been redefined as the intentional infliction of emotional distress, but outrage is supposed to be a catch-all tort. So when there's no other tort out there, there's nothing that you look at that and you're like, that's really bad what happened, but there's no legal cause of action that neatly fits. Outrage falls in the gap. That what happened here was outrageous, and there should be some remedy for it, for the distress it caused, and not just the monetary harm it inflicted. But what it shows is how big this is, and the scale of it and the scope of it is far more dangerous than anybody not named Alex Jones thought possible.
And just to respond to some comments in the chat, I'm not interrupting Barnes for the sake of interrupting. His audio is lagging behind, and so you'll notice when I interrupt it with any audio sound, it catches up. So I'm very deferential to Barnes. The interruption is just to let the audio catch up. Okay, that's gross. What do we segue into now? The football one. Which one do you want to do?
Oh well, yeah, the coach Chucky John Gruden. This would finally beat the NFL on their bogus arbitration claim. Do you remember this one?
Robert, I forgot it's 2021 already that this lawsuit was filed. Where I'm going to say Gruber. I don't know the names of the guys in this, but I don't watch much football. But I know the players. That one of the bestest coaches out there, who had a $100 million salary, was upped and fired because allegedly some DMs or emails from a decade earlier surfaced and were published, and they said this is, he was calling the head of the NFL, I say a pussy. I don't think he called them like the F word, the 6-letter F word. So that someone leaked these emails to the media published it, and they used it as a pretext to fire this guy, cancel his contract, $100 million contract. And then they said that you need to take this lawsuit to arbitration, even though this all stemmed from before he was an employee of the NFL, saying jurisdiction of the arbitrators. And who's the leader of the NFL? The guy that got to
commissioner. Roger Goodell. Currently.
Goodell. So the commissioner gets to appoint the arbitrators, or himself could be the arbitrator to adjudicate on this claim. 4 flipping years he has been pursuing his right to pursue this, not even the claim on its merits. And now I don't know what court it was that said, yeah, it's not going to arbitration. It's an unconscionable arbitration clause that would capture behavior before he was even an NFL employee, that would allow the NFL to select the arbitrators, and even the implicated, impugned individual himself could be the arbitrator, because it's suspected that the NFL themselves are the ones who leaked the emails to the media. What have I missed in terms of the importance and outrageousness of this case?
I mean, I was cheering for Coach Chucky. He was known for that because his facial features kind of look like the character from Child's Play. Mm-hmm. So there's all these, Chucky things, the John Gruden camp. Natural football lover, was, horrified by the allegations. He's just more of a conservative, that he wasn't big on, ignoring gender differences in the NFL. He wasn't big on promoting gay behavior as somehow the number one thing to promote. Yeah, there you see the
I had no idea about that. I think it's a stretch. He doesn't look anywhere near like Chucky, but anyway,
it really just became a thing because he'd get these very expressive facial features. But the other big ruling here is, they had said that a contract that incorporated by reference the NFL's constitution. And it's like, okay, so through that, they claimed that they could arbitrate and deny you the right to a jury trial, deny you the rights of evidence, deny you the rights to an elected or a judge appointed by an elected official, deny you the right to appeal, deny you the right to discovery. All of the things that go into the American civil litigation process could be stripped away from him. And instead, the people he's suing could pick the judge. The people he's suing could pick the rules, because they could amend the rules whenever they wanted as to what was covered and what wasn't covered. So they could change it after the fact. And they could do all of this while the underlying behavior occurred while he was not an employee. It was like, even though the explicit language in the document only allows arbitration for active employees, and he wasn't an employee. Not only that, it was for things that happened when he wasn't an employee. So, I mean, that's how nuts. This was the biggest power grab in the arbitration context out there. And it just happened to occur in a very prominent case. And thankfully, the Nevada Supreme Court recognized it doesn't apply by its plain terms. And if it did, it would be procedurally and substantively unconscionable, because you can't have arbitration clauses where one side gets to decide the rules after the fact, and gets to decide what issues get litigated after the fact, and gets to issue who's going to decide it, including themselves. The commissioner could make himself the arbitrator in a case concerning his bad conduct. It was ridiculous. But finally, the Nevada Supreme Court stepped in and said, yes, it is ridiculous, and is letting Coach Gruden get back into court and get all the constitutional rights and remedies he, as a U.S. citizen and a great football coach, is entitled to.
Do you think they settle now, Robert, or are
the
they
NFL has an IQ over 50? Yes, but rumor is he doesn't care. That no amount of money he will accept beyond a full apology. He wants full discovery and full disclosure. So I think we're going to have some fun there in Vegas, of a different legal kind than normally occurs there in Vegas.
Let me read some of the tipped questions over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Not sure if it went through the first time. You should interview Edison Motors in Canada about how hard it is to actually make hybrid semis in Canada. Canada is a regulatory hellscape. Andrew Piscadlo says the Ukrainian National Guard has horizontally expanded its criminal extortion operations once again and are now running debt, bondage, sex trafficking operations right here in the U.S. I dropped everything, NGU, General Extortion Ring, GitHub, etc. to prove this involvement. I'll keep that open in the backdrop and look at that afterwards. Cliff Norman, if NATO allows Ukraine membership, they should examine Putin's request to join in 2000. These accounts suggest Putin did inquire about Russia joining NATO, but the idea never progressed due to mutual skepticism, differing strategic interests, Russia's concerns about NATO's expansion, no formal application detailed. Andrew Piscadlo, we got another thread about the sex trafficking, which I will open up as well and read this afterwards. Trump should have offered $0 tariffs on tracksuits. We all know what Eastern Europeans want. Douglas McGregor has said things that I agree with, Barnes. Good to hear Barnes talk about Ukraine. Sports fans, I was at the event today, and there was a section talking about CMS and how it is responsible for something like 80% of hospitals' income. If this is true, would you categorize CMS as a government program like USA? That's
It is. That's Medicare and Medicaid is the principal source of reimbursement for most hospitals in America. So when they're lying about things, then they're committing fraud that's actionable as a QI/TAM claim. So like their failure to report vaccine adverse events, anybody that's aware of that, a doctor, nurse, hospital staffer, you have a potential fraud claim you can bring on behalf of the United States taxpayers. So that was part. But yes, that's where a lot of money comes through that channel, but that means there's legal ways to hold them accountable for the various bad actions during COVID that so many hospitals committed.
All right. Before we let me just get to some of the ones on Rumble, and then we go to the question, where else? Says Boo Few. I live in coastal Florida Panhandle and have seen a black bear many times while running and cycling in remote areas where there are very docile, non-aggressive creatures. Their meat and fur are not usable. Well, hold on. Let's do this one. I was just in Central Florida, and it's a place where the black bears are running rampant. You can't shoot them. They're all fun and cuddly until you stumble across them and their cubs, and then they're not quite so friendly and cuddly. The meat is, some parts of the meat is good. There's a portion of it, I think the liver contains like toxic levels of vitamin K, I want to say, or there is a portion of it that you can't eat. Their fur is good for decorative purposes and carpets and whatnot. Robert, what is going on with the hunting of black bears in Florida?
It's now legal. So yeah, there's all these limits. Like it's only like 3 months of the year. There's only one person you can only get one bear per person. But I thought that'd be a worthy challenge for Ethan. Go out there and get your own bear. Get yourself a bear.
I would sooner do a gator because I would eat a gator. I wouldn't eat bear meat because of its.
Oh, it's really sweet and tender.
Let me see what part of the bear.
I had it in Russia, and man, was it good.
Bear meat toxic. I know there's a portion of it. Bear meat, parasites as well. It carries the risk of trichinosis. Is that how you pronounce it? A parasitic disease. Thorough cooking to an internal temperature of 160 is critical in killing the parasite. Freezing alone doesn't necessarily do it. And I think its liver has excessive levels of vitamin K, if I'm not mistaken. Polar bear liver, vitamin A toxicity, hypervitaminosis. Oh, this is polar bears. Maybe the salty polar.
It's sweet meat. Tastes better than chicken.
Hold on a second. I got to tell my kid to turn them. Robert, okay, so let's, not that we can't go as long tonight because I got to entertain a child and have some dinner.
Yeah, we got the Kroger CEO mystery, the beverage company's 100% all natural, Hamas victims suing the UN, SCOTUS shadow docket on ICE, and the comedy of errors. So we've got 6 cases left to cover, but a couple of them are really pretty short.
Yeah, well, let's do the ones I'm more familiar with, which is the victims of the October 7 attacks suing the UN and its affiliate organization, the UNRWA or the UNWRA, UNRWA, which, regardless of what anyone thinks about how October 7 occurred at the scale it did, it occurred. And whether or not you think that some Israelis were killed in the crossfire, there's been confirmed cases of that. October 7 happened. Hamas is a terrorist group, period, full stop. And it's also relatively confirmed. Robert, you're taking some flack for this, for defending the alleged journalist who many people claim was a bona fide terrorist. And I'm on the fence because I don't know enough about it, but I can see both arguments in terms of the guy being a journalist on its face, but a terrorist underneath, and there being ample evidence for that. Set that aside. Now, UNRWA was confirmed to have had an active role in participating in the atrocity that was October 7, so much so that some of the staff got fired, though not criminally charged. Now we have some victims suing the UN and I presume its incorporated entity, the UNRWA. What jurisdiction are they suing in again? This is in America.
Yeah, they're suing in the District of Columbia, and they're suing because they're saying the UNRWA, while affiliated with, is not itself immunized as a United Nations official organization. So this is the principal organization that since the 1950s, really, has been a provider of aid to the Palestinian population. Its primary source of money has been the UNRWA. And its primary goal has been the Palestinians above all other refugees. And what classifies you as a refugee is if you have family ties to property in the British Mandate of Palestine, and you no longer live in Israel, you are considered a Palestinian refugee. So this organization has come under criticism over the years because of allegations that it has been infiltrated by previously PLO supporters, now Hamas supporters in Gaza. Hamas has no influence on the West Bank, but its influence is entirely in Gaza, where it mostly ran out. The PLO or / Fatah, which is now its principal power base, is the West Bank. But this organization has been the main supporter for all things Palestinian. And the allegation is that what they did was put Hamas in a position to do October 7th. They enabled it. The allegation is aiding and abetting. They include variations of conspiracy and the like. And all of it's just a way to attach liability. The main law they're accusing him of violating is the Anti-Terrorism Act, which is Section 2333 of Title 18 of the United States Code. And what that provides is you can sue certain terrorist organizations anywhere around the world. Even for terrorism that occurs outside the United States, you're allowed to sue in the United States if there's any indirect U.S. nexus. Here they say these organizations raise money in the United States. spend money from the United States, and they're alleging they aided and abetted October 7th in happening in the first instance. And so there'll be a suit to watch because where is the line between being a refugee organization and siding with one side or the other in the case of a conflict? What is providing infrastructure aid mean you've aided and abetted any later terror attack that utilizes that infrastructure? So a lot of those questions are open questions that are unresolved legally in the United States.
Well, I do see people in the chat, I say, observing or commenting that, to the extent that that Netanyahu or the Israeli government has been financing Hamas as well, or knowing that they're taking in money, should they be sued? But and by the way,
I think theoretically I think anybody could be sued. I've always wondered about the Qatari government, its enabling of Hamas. For those that don't know, the allegation is that in 2018, Bibi Netanyahu wanted Hamas funded, but without any Israeli fingerprints, and that the Qataris wanted him to sign documents showing that the money they were sending to Hamas was being done at the request of the Israeli government. Bibi Netanyahu has denied the authenticity of those documents.
Well,
and so but legally, but using the same theory as here, the people that were victimized by October 7th could also sue members of the Israeli government, could sue the government of Israel, could sue the government of Qatar, could sue the government of Iran, to the degree they're able to put together evidence that they facilitated and knowingly. The hard part in these cases is always proving knowingly aiding and abetting. Elon Hookover, Hulkower, on our site, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and on his own Substack, is covering some of the latest revelations about October 7th in particular.
And I'm just going to highlight also, in addition to who's been funding them, some people don't know this. This is old, and I think the U.S., and I think a number of organizations, a number of international countries have since pulled their funding. But
the U.S. is the number one, according to the lawsuit. The U.S. government is the number one funder of the organization being sued, is being blamed for aiding and abetting and providing the necessary funding for the Hamas's October 7th attack on the people of Israel.
Yeah,
American citizens were attacked that day.
153 million back in June 2023, and I think a lot of people rightly saying, why is all this money going out there when we have homeless here, we have drugs problems here, we have a number of problems here, just endless funds. Okay, hold on, let me just do a couple more here. That's going to go back and forth and see what we got. Schnookum says, with respect to Dems and funding, have we gotten any updates on Act Blue lately? It would be nice to have a lawsuit against them. Sadaka says, update on my husband, Ben. We recently found out his cancer has turned into an aggressive form of T-cell lymphoma. They're now going to treat him with 6 different types of chemo at once, 1 week on, 3 weeks off for 18 weeks, even though it has become more aggressive and the treatment is harsh. The success rate is pretty high. He has a good chance of being in full remission by the end of the treatment. If he is one of the rare people that doesn't respond to the treatment, our options are limited to null. So
Good luck. It sounds promising.
Vahin, which means is Tahitian for woman, says, thank you, Robert and Viva, for a successful and amazing first 1776 CHA fundraiser. Well, I can tell you one thing. We raised about, I'm going to take a little credit, with the community, raised about $1,000 from selling Louis the Lobster books, signing each one and giving them out at the event. It was fantastic.
Yeah, there's some people that had their kid was reading it, was sharing it on the locals board, so that was good. Great, thanks to everybody who came. Viva, Richard Barris, who had actually a bad foot injury, came anyway, but he's a soldier, so that's his nature. In the military. People's Pundit Daily. Election Wizard came in, made a rare in-person appearance, go over how about running for office, what are the obstacles, what are the hurdles, what are the things to look for. All of the body language, American side body language panel, Greg Hartley, the most intimidating interrogator I think I've ever seen, but also great in jury selection and a wide range of other areas, gives advice to high-end clients and customers on how to communicate, how to express, how to interpret, how to understand. Scott Rouse, deep background in the music industry, also gave his own explanation of what had happened in Nashville. He's a multi-Grammy nominee. People don't know that part about him. Also provided information about how to use it in negotiations, how to use it in interviews, how to use it in social settings, how to create confidence. And then Chase Hughes, Been on with Joe Rogan and others recently. Sat in on multiple quick Q&A sessions, provided all kinds of useful intel about how to use mind control positively, how to spot mind control when it's being used against you, how to use it to give yourself confidence, a bunch of other things. The Lexi Anderson, young lawyer, went into great detail about what it was like on the front lines of the Freedom Wars. Same with Warner Mendenhall, 2-hour Q&A about what was on the front lines of the Freedom Wars for him as well as an experienced lawyer in the space. Then, on freedom planning, the Freedom of Information Act, other things being supported, food freedom, medical freedom, political freedom, financial freedom at 1776lawcenter.com. So it was a great fundraiser. Thanks for all the people who came out. Thanks to all the guests who came and spoke. Thanks to everybody who helped set it up. A bunch of friends and family did a fantastic job. Nieces, nephews, the executive assistant, Renee, helped put together with a whole bunch of her family came in. Brother-in-law and his family helped cook, chickens and waffles, homemade ribs, barbecue pulled pork, pulled chicken, mac and cheese, some slaw, some homemade banana pudding. So it was a great time had by everybody, raised money for a great organization. And we'll continue to do these conferences at least on an annual basis, if not more often. Next one might be in Austin, Texas. Next one might be in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But each year, at a minimum, we'll do one in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
It was amazing. And Chattanooga is beautiful. I was there with my kid. We went up north with Ginger Ninja, went to a shooting range. They had an amazing sporting event on the Tennessee River, people swimming in the river, which I would not have done myself and didn't do myself. But we'll see if we read any news stories about massive outbreaks of like dysentery. I don't know what you get from dirty water. But all right, Robert. So we'll save the rest for locals and we'll go and do the after party there.
Yeah, I think we do one more here, and then we'll save the heat wave, the beverage company, the Kroger CEO mystery, and the comedy of errors, the painting that wasn't, for the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Put in any $5 or more tipped question. We'll get to it as well. We'll cover the last one here is on the Supreme Court shadow docket is the ICE arrest, because that case is now that we've been discussing for a couple of weeks. None of the lower courts would intervene. So it's now got to go up to the Supreme Court on, can you arrest somebody if you see somebody that appears to be Mexican, speaking Spanish with a Mexican accent at a place typically where illegal immigrants gather for illegal labor? You're not allowed to use any of those facts to even ask them a question, to even follow up on whether or not they have identity documents in the United States. According to the judge who said deportation is no different than the slave trade. That's the case that now we have to go to the Supreme Court to get relief because the Ninth Circuit refused to step in and do anything about it.
And the Supreme Court is out for the summer?
It is, but this is on their shadow docket. So it's an emergency administrative stay request because the judge gave a universal injunction. Did it just district-wide, though. But, of course, that's 10% of all the illegals in the country are in her district. So it's the de facto shutting down any ability of ICE to do its job. I assume the Supreme Court will step in and reverse and issue an injunction forthwith. Otherwise, the ICE won't be able to do their job for the next 6 months to a year before it's heard on regular appeal.
Amazing. What we're going to do now is we're going to go raid somebody. Everyone, I've given you the link multiple times to Locals if you want to come over and see what's going on at Locals. Let's see if Cool Frog is live right now. I've given a link for a P.O. box if anybody wants to send stuff. The link for Locals, link for Louis the Lobster, link for Viva Fry merch if you want to get some merch and support us. 1776. Hold on. That's the one I didn't share yet for the evening. It is event 7. It's Robert, the silent auction is still up, or when does it end?
The silent, there's still opportunity. If you get a golden raffle ticket, you can bid like $100 and you can win like a $4,000 prize. So there's a few of those still left. So golden raffle tickets, other things. There's we got the little podium. We got the honorary podium made in honor of the J6 defendant. We've got somebody donated an AR-15. We've got people who donated all kinds of cool stuff, all kinds of artwork, all kinds of sculpture, and then there's the regular things that are up on that site where any excess above the cost of the good goes to 1776 Law Center. So the auction's still good for about 24 hours. So hop over. I think event.give 1776.
Yeah, that's it. It didn't bring up the auction, but event.
You have to go up to gifts or things or items. That's where there should be a connection.
View items. Here we go. Let me bring this up right before. Did I just shut myself out of the stream? No, I
No,
didn't.
you're
I'm
still
right
here.
Okay, hold on. Let's see this. I'll get the items. Here we go. These are the items. So go check it out. I'll give everybody this link.
Yeah,
A
the
bunch of great stuff.
1776 Law Center fundraiser. There's a bourbon with Barnes you can do. We may end up doing it digitally, but you can do it one-on-one. There's illegal consultations you can get for very cheap if you're depending on how the bidding goes. So there's all kinds of cool things. The podium replica that's up there, a bunch of stuff that art that people have contributed, like the bourbon with Barnes and the different kind of gifts there's all kinds of stuff people have given as part of this. That remember, you get to bid, you might get a great deal on it. If it ends up being more expensive than you expect, well, everything net goes to support 1776 Law Center. So it's a win-win kind of auction.
Amazing. Everybody, before you leave, make sure that you are subscribed, that you have notifications turned on. And I should have gotten Cool Frog to see if he's live. He should be live. Yeah, go check out Cool Frog. I know that what's his name? Salty Cracker's live now as well, but he doesn't allow for.
I don't think he allows raids.
So I don't know what that deal is, but go check out Cool Frog and support smaller creators as well. But before you go, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications on CommieTube as well. And right now, we're taking the party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we'll get to the tips and the remainder of the issues. And then I'm going to hit a pool with the kid and order some Chick-fil-A. I don't know what we're going to eat. And we're going to eat something a little bit healthy. So, Locals, here we come. Oh, Robert, do you have anything coming up this week?
No, the last week was on with Richard Barris, did a deep dive into what's happening on Israeli public opinion in the United States. Also did a big deep dive with the Duran on the Alaska summit. Most of what we talked about came true. Almost everybody was saying it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a sabotage effort, or Trump will walk it back. Or, and we said, no, we thought there was a very good chance that they would continue to move towards peace. And that's precisely what happened. So you can watch that on the Duran show that we did last Tuesday or Wednesday. But otherwise, this week will just be live bourbons with Barnes each night at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Usually we do a brief during the week that gives you curated links to interesting articles and topics and court cases. So we'll have some hush-hushes up this week on Ghislaine Maxwell, on some other recommended topics, on Jeffrey Epstein. May get both of those hush-hushes up this week to go with the Epstein trilogy of hush-hushes. Already did the Robert Maxwell one. But so all of that will be up along with some Barnes Law School lessons. There's some recordings we did this weekend that we're going to be uploading in the Content Plus section for people who want to contribute to 1776 Law Center, but at a much lower rate for some of the video content that we recorded, some of the seminars and sessions. So all of that's going to be there at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
And that's where we're heading right now. I'll be live at 3 o'clock. If I'm late tomorrow, only because we have another 7 hours to drive, I'm going to get up early and daily. Everybody, 3 o'clock on Rumble. Go Locals. Here we come. Rumble and YouTube. Peace out. Update stream